Hey everyone, I am Shaira Tisaga and welcome to our video lesson on developmental reading. This course focuses on developmental reading as a learner-centered approach to teaching reading skills among early learners. It emphasizes the gradual development of reading abilities through instruction that is appropriate to learners' developmental stages. The course covers the meaning and goals of developmental reading, the role of the teacher, stages of reading development, phonemic awareness, phonics instruction, reading techniques and strategies for developing reading fluency and comprehension. Emphasis is given to preparing future teachers to plan, implement, and evaluate effective reading instruction for early literacy development. Our learning objectives by the end of this video or discussion, you should be able to define developmental reading and explain its importance in early literacy, identify the stages of reading development in early learners, describe techniques used to develop reading skills in young learners, apply appropriate reading strategies based on learners' developmental stages, demonstrate understanding of effective instructional practices for early reading development. So this lecture focuses on developmental reading and the techniques used to develop reading skills in early learners. Developmental reading emphasizes the gradual improvement of reading abilities through instruction that is appropriate to learners' developmental stages. The lesson highlights the importance of early literacy, the stages of reading development, and effective teaching techniques that help young learners build phonemic awareness, word recognition, comprehension, and reading fluency. So now, let's proceed to our first discussion about developmental reading. A branch of reading instruction is designed to support literacy in a variety of contexts and to enhance reading comprehension and decoding skills. Developmental reading also a comprehensive reading program that consists of several sessions of phases. So it is called developmental because it follows the natural stages of individual development. This means that students progress through different phases or sessions based on their abilities and growth. The program believes that reading skills develop gradually and improvement happens as students acquire and strengthen specific skills over time. Importance of developmental reading. So developmental reading is important because it supports students' reading growth according to their individual stages of development. It helps learners build strong foundational skills such as decoding, vocabulary, and comprehension before moving to more complex texts. So it ensures that students are taught appropriate strategies at each reading stage, preventing gaps in learning. Developmental reading also prepares students to read effectively across all subject areas, including science, social studies, and mathematics, where understanding complex texts is essential. Most importantly, developmental reading promotes equal learning opportunities by making reading accessible to all students, including those who need additional support. This leads to improved academic performance, confidence, and lifelong reading skills. Goals of developmental reading. So the main goal of developmental reading is to make reading accessible to everyone by strengthening reading skills. So let's now proceed to the role of the teacher in developmental reading. Let's now proceed to the role of the teacher in developmental reading. The first one is assess reading levels. Identify each student's developmental stage to provide appropriate instruction. So in this level, teachers need to know where each student is in their reading development. This means identifying whether a student is an emergent, early, transitional, or fluent reader. Knowing their level helps teachers provide instruction and materials that are appropriate for their stage, so students aren't frustrated or bored. Next proceed is Provide developmentally appropriate instruction. Choose texts and activities that match students' abilities. So for this role, teachers select books, texts, and activities that match the students' reading abilities. For example, emergent readers get picture books and simple text, while transitional readers can handle longer and more complex stories. So this ensures that every student can learn effectively and develop confidence. Let's now proceed to model effective reading strategies. Demonstrate predicting, questioning, clarifying, and summarizing. Teachers demonstrate how to read and think about text. This includes strategies such as predicting what might happen next, questioning the text to check understanding, and clarifying confusing parts, summarizing the story after reading. By modeling these strategies, students learn how skilled readers approach a text. So let's now proceed to the support, decoding, and comprehension. So it helps students recognize words and understand meaning. So teachers help students recognize words or decoding and understand meaning, comprehension. So this is essential, especially for early and transitional readers. Support can include phonics instruction, vocabulary building, or guided reading sessions. So let's proceed to create a supportive reading environment. So in this role, it offers rich reading materials, encourage repeated reading. Teachers provide a rich reading environment, access to a variety of books and reading materials, opportunities for repeated reading of favorite text, a space where students feel comfortable making mistakes. So this encourages students to take risks, try new strategies, and enjoy reading. So let's now proceed to the guide and monitor progress. So guide and monitor progress. It observes students, give feedback, and provide additional support when needed. So it means teachers observe students closely while they read. They give feedback on strengths. So they give feedback on strengths and areas to improve. They also provide extra help or interventions for students struggling with specific reading skills. Monitoring ensures students keep improving and do not fall behind. So now let's proceed to encourage independent reading. So, encourage independent reading is gradually help students become confident and self-directed readers. So, as students grow, teachers gradually release responsibility, allowing students to read more independently. So the goal is for students to become confident, self-directed readers who can read for understanding without constant guidance. So independent reading helps develop fluency, comprehension, and lifelong reading habits. So now let's proceed to next slide. Alright, so let's now proceed to the next slide. Stages of reading development. So the first one is the emergent readers. Enjoy books, especially picture books, become familiar with books, prefer reading independently, recognize letters, words, and language patterns, and learn concepts of reading. So emergent readers are at the very beginning stage of reading development. So at this point, children may not read independently yet, but they are already learning how books work. So they learn through enjoyable and repeated experiences with books, especially picture books. So by listening to the stories and looking at pictures, they begin to recognize letters, some familiar words, and common language patterns. So they also learn important concepts of print, such as reading from left to right and knowing where a story begins and ends. So at this stage, children are starting to notice letter-sound relationships when teachers or adults read with them and talk about the story. So children begin to predict what might happen next using both pictures and prior experiences. So now let's proceed to Also, emergent readers begin understanding letter, sound relationships, use pictures and repeated reading to make predictions. Now, let's proceed to the next slide. Early readers. So, for early readers, use multiple strategies to read words, rely on pictures to predict and confirm meaning, discuss story, background, and message, use cueing systems like visual, language, and meaning, develop habits of predicting and confirming while reading. So, for this, early readers are beginning to read on their own, but they still rely on support. So they use several strategies to figure out unfamiliar words. One common strategy is using pictures to help predict what a word might be. So they are also better. They were also better able to talk about the story, including the background, the characters' actions, and the message of the text. During this stage, readers rely heavily on cueing systems such as visual cues, letters and words, language patterns, and meaning. So this is an important stage because students develop the habit of taking risks in reading, predicting words, and then checking whether those words make sense in the story. So let's now proceed to another reader, which is the transitional readers. So prefer reading book series, familiar characters and settings support comprehension, show improved reading rate, can figure out most words independently, and need support with more complex texts. So for this, traditional readers are becoming more independent and confident. They often enjoy reading book series because familiar characters, settings, and story patterns make comprehension easier. So at this stage, students usually read at a better pace, which is often a sign of improved understanding. So they already have strategies to decode most words, but they may still need help when the text becomes more complex. So the focus for traditional readers is strengthening comprehension skills while continuing to build fluency and vocabulary. So now let's proceed to fluent readers. So what is fluent readers? So fluent readers is read independently and confidently, understand how tests work, integrate cueing system effectively, maintain meaning in longer texts, recognize the text influence ideas and thinking. So for this, fluent readers read independently and with confidence. So they understand how texts are structured and can read longer and more complex passages while maintaining meaning. So teachers at this stage focus on how will students integrate cueing systems and use reading strategies effectively. Fluent readers do not just read words correctly. They understand that text can shape ideas, opinions, and understanding. Reading is no longer just a skill, it becomes a tool for learning, thinking, and interpreting the world. So now let's proceed to another slide. The reading pyramid. Understanding the process of building strong literacy skills. So here is our pyramid, the reading skills pyramid. So there are 5 pillars of reading. The reading skills are like a pyramid. The foundation is phonemic awareness, which lets children hear and work with sounds. On the top of that comes phonics and fluency, which help children read words accurately and smoothly. Finally, vocabulary and comprehension allow children to understand and interpret text. So research by the National Reading Panel 1997 shows that when all 5 components are taught effectively, learners have the best chance for success. So each component builds on the previous one. So a strong foundation is essential. So now let's proceed to the first pyramid. So the first is phonemic awareness. So what is phonemic awareness? Phonemic awareness is the ability to notice, think about, and work with the individual sounds in spoken words. So the phonemic, this is the foundation of reading. Children who can identify and manipulate sounds in words can later connect sounds to letters, which is the phonics. Without it, learning to read is very difficult. For example, recognizing that k, t makes the word cat. So now, let's proceed to another pyramid, which is the phonics. So phonics is the understanding of the relationship between letters and sounds. So phonics allows children to decode the words, reading unfamiliar words by sounding them out. So it builds directly on phonemic awareness. For example, knowing that the letter sh together, letters HS together make the SH sound. Sh, sh. Alright, so now let's proceed to another pillars of reading, which is the fluency. Fluency is the ability to read text accurately, quickly, and with expression. So, the fluency is the bridges decoding and comprehension. If children read slowly or hesitantly, they can focus only on words, not
meaning. So fluency allows the brain to focus on understanding the story. So for example, reading the sentence, the dog ran fast to catch the ball, smoothly and with natural pauses rather than word by word. So now, let's proceed to another pillar of reading, which is the vocabulary. So vocabulary is the knowledge of the meanings of words. It means vocabulary is essential for understanding text. The more words of a child knows, the easier it is to comprehend complex stories or information. For example, understanding words like predict, influence, or analyze in a story or article. So now let's proceed to the comprehension. Comprehension is the ability to understand, interpret, and analyze what is read. So, comprehension is the ultimate goal of reading. It relies on phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, and vocabulary. Strong comprehension allows readers to summarize, infer, and critically think about text. For example, after reading Little Red Riding Hood, a student can summarize the story, explain the main idea, and discuss the lesson about trusting strangers. So that's an example of comprehension. So now let's go for the other slide, which is the techniques to develop reading skills in early learners. So now let's proceed to the first reading or that technique. The first one is shared reading, a reading technique where the teacher reads a book aloud while students follow along, usually in a big book or a shared copy. So this means shared reading is designed for early learners and emergent readers. It helps students become familiar with books and print, learn vocabulary and language patterns, and observe fluency and expression in reading, practice predicting and making connections with the story. It provides a safe, supportive environment where students can focus on understanding the text without the pressure of reading independently. So for example, the teacher reads The Very Hungry Caterpillar aloud while students follow the words on a big book. Alright, so now let's proceed to another technique, which is the guided reading. Guided reading is a reading technique where the teacher works with a small group of students who read a text that matches their instructional reading level, guiding and supporting them as they read. So this means guided reading focuses on targeted reading development. It helps students to decode words like phonics. Phonics. So it builds fluency, reading smoothly and with expression. Strengthens comprehension, allows teachers to give immediate feedback and scaffold strategies. It helps students move from emergent to early to transitional reader stages by practicing reading with guidance. So, for example, a small group of students reads a short story about the farm animals. So that's all for our topic today. I hope you learned something from me. Thank you and God bless.